Hello, welcome to Digestible Dialogues. I am Sherry Lip, the founder of Happy Gut for Life. I am so happy you have joined me today. I'm excited to share that I have a special guest that I will be talking with in a moment here, Karyn Haley. I was on her podcast, the Cheeky Podcast, a little bit ago, and now she's joined us here on Digestible Dialogues. Karyn, like me, has dealt with Crohn's for over 20 years and she coaches people with IBD, and she is known as the IBD Health Coach for Moms. So I'm so excited. Join us for our chat coming up right now. Welcome to the Digestible Dialogues podcast, Karyn. We're happy to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
Yes. We talked on your podcast a little bit ago about a lot of subjects, and so we're going to dive into a couple more and kind of further into some things that we touched on there. So you specialize in IBD for moms and women.
That's right.
So we're going to talk about kind of how IBD specifically affects women in their lives and their health and, everything that women have to go through with it. So, what are your, kind of to open it up, how did you get into specializing in that?
In moms particularly?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a mom. And so what I noticed about IBD after I became a mom is that we have a little bit of a different picture. I love that today we're talking about women because so often women and men get lumped together with IBD. But even to further, just go down a little bit further into that, moms are a whole different category of that as well, because we have to think about our kids and how is this impacting them and how can we be the best mom that we want to be, but still deal with all of the things that our illness entails. And I found that when I started my business, my kids were really little and they were interrupting sessions. And so I just said, you know what? I just want to work with moms because moms know what I'm going through and I know what they're going through. We have a very similar path. And now all of these years later, I have 2 adult kids. I still have a teenager at home, but I still focus on moms. Now, I would say 95% of my practice is women. And then there's those couple guys that are just brave enough to get in touch with me and say, hey, do you work with guys? And of course, yes, if somebody contacts me, I do. But there's something like it's just a kindred spirit between me and moms because we get each other. So that's kind of how that just evolved over time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I primarily work with women too. I'm not a mom, but, so my people I work with tend to be like concerned about work and navigating work and, trying to stay professional. And it's very difficult with IBD.
It's a big one.
How do you think women are uniquely challenged, women in general, by IBD?
In so many ways. And I think a lot of it goes back to our hormones because hormonally, women go through so many different changes that men just don't go through. And that starts with menopause. I'm sorry, I got to reverse that. That starts with menstruation. So women go through menstruation. That's not something that men go through. And when the hormone fluctuations happen, even at the start of it, whether it's like you're dealing with it every month or it's at the start of it, if you've been diagnosed with IBD around that time, like I was, it really will have a strong impact on that. Also, pregnancy. That's another way that women are dealing with IBD differently than men. That's not something that men go through, and that has a strong impact on our Crohn's and colitis symptoms. And then, like I tried to say earlier, menopause. Menopause is that other place where if you're a man, that's just not something that you're going to experience. So I feel like all of this goes back to hormones. And if you want to, we can get into the specifics of all of those because there's a lot to touch on in terms of our menstrual cycle, in terms of pregnancy, in terms of menopause. But I feel like that's the big component that men don't deal with in the same way. It's not to say that men don't have hormones. It's just that women are dealing with these added hormonal fluctuations due to different things that happen in their life, that these are things that are just not happening for men.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that I don't think a lot of people think about our hormonal changes and our digestive systems. And what kind of get diving into that. Do you see? I mean, I didn't get triggered with a big bad Crohn's flare until I was in my early 20s. Do you see people kind of getting flares around these different changes in our lives?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. I see it all the time. Now, we have to be fair and say that that's not everybody's picture. Everyone's picture with IBD, I find the more people I talk to, the more different experiences I hear. But I do hear about it a lot. It is, well, I went on birth control and then my IBD came up and I became diagnosed with it. Or I had my first baby and then I got diagnosed with IBD. Or even something as simple as I got my period and I already have IBD and my IBD symptoms got worse. So I see this coming up over and over and over. There is such a strong hormonal component that's not being addressed by the medical community. I mean, how often do you hear a gastroenterologist talking about that link, talking about women, hormones, and IBD? It just doesn't happen. Yet anecdotally, I see it over and over in my practice. And I can relate to it because I've been through all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through the start of my period and I've been through pregnancy. I've been through menopause. And my IBD personally has changed dramatically in all of those places.
So we were talking about our experiences with that, and going through the full cycle. I'm kind of in the perimenopause cycle right now, so it's a new experience for me. But so far, no worsening of symptoms for me yet.
That's great.
But I do talk to a lot of people, and it does seem around the time of having a child, having a baby, that they'll get a flare. And sometimes it's not even the first one; it'll be like their third baby, and all of a sudden flare. So, and that is hormonal changes are such a huge part of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have 3 kids, and every one of them was different. So I think it's important to recognize that just because you have some sort of IBD reaction or a non-IBD reaction with the first pregnancy, it doesn't mean that the second pregnancy is going to turn out that way. We know that research says that if you are in a flare-up when you become pregnant, that does have an impact on how you're carrying the baby. So increased flare-ups for you. Low birth weight is an issue for the baby. Premature birth is an issue for the baby. And then flaring later on, even if your disease was quiet, flaring after birth is really common. So you're seeing all of these hormone fluctuations, and it is certainly impacting IBD, especially in pregnancy. And I don't know about you, but various people that I talk to, various women will say, I've decided because of my IBD, I just don't want to even be a mom. That's just not something that I want to do because I don't want to even bring that, to possibly to my baby. So it can have a really profound impact on, any woman.
That's kind of where I was. And then I was kind of back and forth on it, and then I didn't end up having a baby, but and there's lots of reasons for that that people choose, and so, but it's a huge factor of like knowing at a young age and wondering if this was going to pass on, and
it's a huge worry for women, and I still worry about it. You think about it when your kids are little, but I still think about it to this day. And my oldest is 22. So I still think one day, is that going to happen to them? And this is a very unique challenge that I think women have as well. We wonder, are we passing on? At the very least, I feel like I passed a sensitive belly onto my kids. Thankfully, nobody has been diagnosed with Crohn's or colitis, but I do feel like we've gone through periods of time where people have been sensitive to gluten or to dairy or something like that. And I said, what role did I play in that? And so as women, that's a big stressor.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think that, having your own experience and having those worries, did you have maybe a more honed diet for your kids than just anything goes? Or
Totally. Yep. Well, so when my kids were what I think impacted it more. And on the episode that we did on my podcast, we talked a lot about the specific carbohydrate diet. I think what impacted it more was the fact that I was starting the specific carbohydrate diet when they were really little. And so I had two kids. I didn't want to feed everybody differently. And so everybody just ate what I ate. And
Mhm.
so as my kids got older, they realized, you know what, we kind of eat differently than other people eat. So I think it was a combination. It was a combination of, you know what, I just can't. I don't have the energy to make all these different meals. So I'm going to make the
Mhm.
same food. And it's healthy anyway. And so I'm going to make the same food. And then I also thought to myself, I want to make sure that they don't grow up like I grew up on, a very Italian family, pasta, bread, and cake and cookies. And my parents did not like get sugar cereals, and we didn't eat processed food, but it was all of this pasta bread and all of that homemade kind of goodness that I said, I'm not going to do that. And I feel like my kids kind of rebelled on that as they got older. So and then there's a 7 to 8 year gap. And then I have my other child that I had, and he has lived a whole different life than they lived. Because by the time he came along, I wasn't so strict in SCD. I had learned from the other two maybe to not be so strict and kind of ease up a little bit. So you know how you learn, right? You do something and you learn, and then
Mhm.
you do better the next time. It's very much like that. So I have two kids that kind of experienced health, 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 and I was trying to keep them healthy, trying to keep me healthy at the same time. And then my younger one, I think he leads a more normal, like normal diet without me being so helicoptery about their food, about his food. And so I think that may be the better way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Hindsight.
yeah, definitely something I've like when I've really talked about, I can kind of look at it from an objective point of view. Not having kids is like when people are like, I'm having all my kids do this. I'm like, really think carefully about that, because there's that food morality that kids can develop, and just eating disorders, and then or resentment, and there's so much to go with it, that you really have
Yeah.
to really think about it. But that kind of leads into part of our conversation when it comes to food avoidance. And and I this obviously applies to men and women, but doing research, I mean, women are more likely to take a dietary approach to managing the illness. They're also just more likely to restrict food, and kind of
Absolutely.
raised from a young age to do that. So I mean, they said, I was just looking at a study that's like 70% of women have done some kind of diet in their lives, and
Mm.
women are about 20% more likely to be on a diet than men. And that's, you're talking about, and, because we're talking about a health inducing diet, but um, I think that our body image and stuff still ties all into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it does. And I don't even like to use the word diet with my
Yeah,
clients. I like to
exactly.
say eating plan because there's such a negative connotation in that word
Mhm.
diet. And we're taught from such a young age that if you're not happy with the way you look, you should go on a diet, and you should look
Yeah.
this way and you shouldn't look that way. And so when it comes to a gut healing eating plan, I don't want it to be as restrictive as what a diet would be, because so many people with IBD, they don't need to cut calories or lose weight or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of, so yeah, started using like a nutritional therapy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and yeah, I was talking with somebody, and she had mentioned that term, and I was like, oh, I really like that. So,
Yeah.
because I'm like, we're in the healing phase, of your journey, and I think diet does, that's part of the things that keep people on it or off of it. Because the diets are, like I always see people like, I cheated on SCD, and that's
Yes.
not really what you're doing. You chose something to eat that wasn't it.
Exactly. It was
And
actually a conscious choice, and maybe it was the right choice in that moment for you.
Right.
Cheating, like that word, it has such a negative connotation. And I think there's so much guilt, shame associated with it that I think we just need to get away from that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's okay. It's okay. You're
Yeah.
human. It's
Yeah.
okay.
It's okay. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't like to use the word cheating. I cringe a little bit when I see somebody use it, because I'm like, it's not, because it just has the implication. I just don't like the implication of it.
Yeah, we
Uh,
already are body shamed enough
you're right.
as women, as we're, continuing this conversation, how it's IBD is different for women. As women, we are so conditioned that we have to really think about how we look on the outside, and it's just valued so much more than with men that, yeah, I'm not going to call it a diet, and I don't like the word cheated either. And we've talked about this before, you and I, Sherry, the whole illegal legal thing. I don't like that terminology either.
Yeah,
Let's
I
just be
think,
gentler on ourselves.
yeah, moving into the more modern mindset, and there is an anti-diet movement out there, and so it's like,
Right.
this is not a diet. This is making the right choice for your body. And so that's what we wanted to talk about. Definitely a subject I feel strongly about, that I keep researching. I know you have a lot of information on, and that is the expansion of food avoidance. I was actually literally just talking with somebody, and she's like, I had a flare up, and so she's like, I went even stricter,
Oh,
SCD. And she's like, and then I went, and there was even more inflammation, and I was like, the thing is, too much restriction can also lead to dysbiosis, because you're reducing your bacterial diversity so much that you still might
right.
be in dysbiosis. And so, what are your thoughts, on that?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there is so much, especially when we talk about gut healing diets, because they have so much to do with removing. And I kind of like to reframe that and think about, yes, maybe you're going to remove X, Y, and Z, but here's what we're going to add in. Like that whole crowding out mentality. And to me, it's just like a mindset shift, but it's a little shift to just be not so, I'm taking away. So you don't feel so deprived and so restricted. I think a lot of it, you may even be eating the same food. I think a lot of it is actually a mindset shift that we need to do about it, rather than saying I'm depriving myself and all those words we just talked about using. I think sometimes it's more about even just a mindset shift, and then being okay when you do go off of it. Right? That whole thing, that whole concept of food fear, being afraid of what you're eating. I talk about that all the time because it's such a big topic for women. Women so much more than men, I think. Don't you think?
I do think, because you have the built-in fear of expanding, like we talked about, both of us going through, and then you've got the food fear of, like, I'm not supposed to eat this or that. and,
I'm supposed to, right? Like all of those, they're just so strong. Like it's like here or you're here, but the middle is not okay. And I think that a new modern approach to gut healing should have more to do with being in the middle is actually okay.
right.
Yeah.
So, how do you approach the idea of, you're in the beginning phase. You have the symptoms, so of course you're going to restrict a little more. How do you approach the expansion topic?
The first thing is insight. Like I said, I think that a lot of this is actually mindset. So the first thing is insight. So to say, yes, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through, just like recognizing the fear surrounding it, recognizing that recognizing that you're feeling that way. I think insight is the first step. And I think that sometimes then will diminish the fear of it in the first place. And then from there, I think it's important. Again, I got to go back to mindset, because I think it's important to then embrace this change that you're going through. If you go into it kicking and screaming, if you go into it saying all the things I'm going to restrict, it's really not the healthiest place. So coming into it from a place of celebrating those small wins, of a place of embracing all of the wonderful things that are happening. I think those things are the start of a much more healthier way to approach a gut healing diet.
Yeah, yeah, I agree because, and there is the mindset of I am doing something bad by having something that's actually probably that might be healthy. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Maybe you're having an indulgence. But when you're, I kind of approach it like let's add in some healthy whole food options that are beyond SCD. If I'm working with a CD person, like a sweet potato.
Yes. I
And
love the sweet
then
potato.
sweet
Yes.
potato is like my
Yeah,
go-to.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And for adding that in, and you think this is going to be bad for me, it's more likely it's that
Exactly. There's
nocebo
that mindset
effect.
piece.
Yeah, and so
Exactly.
that you can convince yourself right into an upset stomach.
Yes, which is just as bad for you because all of that emotion can create inflammation in your body. So now you're creating just as much damage as that food that you would have eaten would create. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Yeah. So I love bringing those extra foods in and preparing them in a way that is much easier for your body to digest and absorb, like a sweet potato, for example. I love that example, bringing that in. But I don't know about you. Tell me if this rings true for you. Do you see some resistance with that, especially people that have maybe been on a very strict gut healing diet where there were no grains, no potatoes, no rice, anything like that? Sometimes it's difficult for them to make that, even though you say to them, okay, listen, you should do this, this is great, you're ready, go for it. I still sometimes see resistance because they just think, well, it's not on the diet. What if I do that and something goes wrong? Do you see that kind of resistance, that push and pull too?
yeah. I definitely see that kind of fear and resistance, and also the idea that I think people convince themselves that anything not on SCD is bad. And
Right.
so I've heard that because you hear people say SCD is the healthiest diet in the world, and then of course when you're you're thinking about the world, that's obviously
Is it
I mean
really?
it's an American based diet. It's a modification. Sometimes I do worry that when I see people internationally, I'm like, well, your grains and stuff actually might be might be okay. It's, the American ones are so have been so changed.
Yeah.
So it's like that's something to think about. But I do see, if you get that mindset, and that is where that disordered eating starts to come in, where you get that food morality and good and bad, and even though I think there are lots of unhealthy foods out there, I try not to use those terms, good or bad.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
that's
I
true.
don't want to think that sweet. That's why I always say sweet potatoes, because it's this whole food that's it's healthy. It has health benefits, and it's not bad. It might not be what you needed early on, but it is something because I actually asked a poll question. Have you given up a food that was because it was not a CD that you were always fine with?
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
And 50% said yes.
Sure.
And and so it is. I want to help get over that food fear because I went through it too.
Oh, I did 100%. When I started the specific carbohydrate diet, I did fanatical adherence. Like I
Mhm.
was afraid to eat anything off the diet. That's why I get it so much because I went through that and I didn't stray like not a morsel for 2 years because I thought that it was so ingrained in me that if I did stray, like the something so catastrophic would happen, even though I had no evidence that supported that feeling.
Yeah, I know, and I just look at so much evidence that supports the contrary. That these things, I guess my thought is like you're getting your gut to a point of healing, so therefore you need the foods that help maintain a healthy microbiome, just like anybody else does. And so, like, you need those resistant starches And, for me, flaxseed has been very beneficial at my age. and,
Right?
it's and that's, and I've seen people talk about, like, I wish I could have this. And it's like, well, maybe you could.
Yeah, maybe you can't, but maybe you could.
Yeah.
And why not try it in just a small quantity? I
Yeah.
mean, we're not talking about people who are in a massive flare up that really need to, bring things under control. We're talking
Yeah.
about when some time has passed and people just staying on the diet way too long. And it could be the specific carbohydrate diet. It could be autoimmune paleo. It could be FODMAPs. It doesn't have to be the specific carbohydrate diet. It could be any diet. I just see people staying on these way too long. It's like you're staying longer after the party's over. It's like you're just
Yeah.
staying too long. It's time to move on and try something else, and try them first in a way that's easy to digest and easy to absorb, so that you can see how does your body really react to these things. And
Mhm.
it's not about trying 10 things at once. It's about starting small. Let's start with that sweet potato. I love the sweet potato because I think that's a great thing to start with, because the carbohydrate load and the nutritional value is not that different between a sweet potato and butternut squash. So
Yep,
go
that's what
for
I
it with
think
that
too.
sweet potato, and let's
Mhm.
see how you do. And what's really cool about the sweet potato is that there's so many cousins of the sweet potato, like the white sweet potato and the Japanese sweet potato. So if you do well with that, then you can actually start branching out even more.
Yep, I absolutely love the white sweet potatoes,
Me
and
too.
they are a little more starchy. So yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of suggest the orange ones, and the purple
Yeah.
ones are great too, and the
Yes.
Japanese
Yes.
ones. And yeah, there's so many good things you can make with them, and it's such a satisfying thing that that's my thing. It's like you can do these things, and you're less likely to go order French fries, at a fast food
Right. Because you're going to
restaurant. And
feel more satiated. You know what I
right,
mean? Like, rather than feeling deprived all the time, you're going to feel like you had something that was kind of, I mean, I don't know what the word is, but not sinful, but like something yummy. You had
yeah,
something yummy. And
exactly,
you want to feel that. Everybody deserves to feel that way.
yeah. How do you approach kind of also in this avoidance thing?
Yeah.
If somebody's like, I'm doing SCD, my symptoms are getting worse. I know you talked about in the last one how you approach people who say SCD is not working for me, but like and that you have kind of a protocol for that. Do you go beyond SCD, or you find ways to get SCD to work? Because I found that some people, it's just that's not the right diet for them,
Yeah.
and they keep restricting.
Exactly. It's so individual. It depends on the person. Sometimes I love going back to the place where you felt really well. And sometimes that's one step back, and sometimes that's a couple steps back. But you go back to, and it's not for a long time, it's just until you kind of can regroup. And that's always my first step, because if we can do this with food, that's the lowest hanging fruit. That's the easiest thing. So let's just take a step back. Maybe it's something that you're eating that's just kind of just upsetting to your stomach. Let's just take a step back, a quick step back. That does not always work though. So sometimes we take that step back and then we realize in a week, maybe 2 weeks, this is not working. And then we have to look at other things. And I have, within the system that I help clients with, I don't just work in food, I work in pillars. I have 5 pillars that I typically work with clients on. And I have to be just fun and call it the flush formula, because I feel like we have to have a little bit of fun with our illness. And so those pillars, it's an acronym, and it stands for food, lifestyle, unconventional treatments, supplements, and higher mindset. And so food is only one piece of the healing puzzle. So then if that doesn't work, like I said, I like to do food first, but if that doesn't work, then we start to look at other areas. Maybe there's a supplement that you need to bring into your diet. It's not always about food. Maybe you're so anxious about what you're eating that that's actually preventing you from moving forward. Well, now we need to look at the mind body picture of this. Maybe there's some sort of energy healing that would be really beneficial for you that you have not tried. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep, right? Or maybe just the quality of your sleep is not right. So we can't always look at diet alone. I love to start with diet because it can move the needle in a big transformative way. But we need to go beyond that. And that's why I work in these all 5 pillars. And so when I see that someone's struggling, let's say on the specific carbohydrate diet, and we've taken that step back and it doesn't seem to work, we'll move to another pillar. Rather than restrict more in the food department, we'll talk about another pillar that might be helpful. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 How about you? What do you do?
I think, yeah, I kind of do the same thing where I kind of have a protocol of it's just a short elimination period where it's basic
Mm-hmm.
and easy. And it's like, okay, and then I want to assess, okay, here's all the things that, work or already work, don't work. And we're not going to think about diet protocol that, SCD or gaps or whatever. We're just going to stick with these basics. And see, and then I have focuses. I have like a 6-week focus where it's like kind of assess and prep, and then you're gonna start this, whole foods based diet where you're just focused on these foods, and that's why we're just focused on the foods you can have that feel safe. And then you move through like kind of similar to your pillars. You're talking about stress management, body movement, because it could be like I'm going through. I've got like a tight back, and so and that can make me feel not very well all over because you get your muscles are all tightened up.
Sure.
So it could be maybe that's a problem. Maybe you need to stretch or do yoga or see a doctor. Depending on what's going on.
Right.
And because I do get that too, where people are like, well, I don't go to the doctor. I'm like, sometimes it might be unrelated. I tend to see people thinking that everything that's happening to them is somehow related to the Crohn's or to SCD. Like, what can I take an SCD
when it might not be, it might be something completely different. Yes. Right. Yes. It's so easy to get that tunnel vision, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, and then I see people like, well, I ate this and I got a flare, so obviously this caused it. And it's like, maybe not.
Maybe. Yeah. That's why I like to set that food aside for a minute, and then let's try it again. Don't be afraid of it, right? Let's try it again and see, was it really that food? Because there, like you said, there could be your back problem. It could be there's so many things it could be. It isn't always IBD that's causing the problem.
Yeah, and then of course, and this is the kind of the little fun segment I wanted to get into. So I'll kind of start it out when people try something new, and then like, oh, I didn't feel well. Well, it's like, well, in what ways? Like, you get a little bloated. Of course, you haven't eaten that in however 10 years or whatever it is, and or maybe how did you prepare it? Right. So I might try to go through some food prep. If you're preparing a grain or a quinoa, which is not really a grain but kind of is, you want to soak it, you want to cook it well, then you might want to, actually the best way is you're going to refrigerate it and then heat it up, because that helps the resistant starch.
Increase that resistant starch. Yes, exactly. Yep.
So I thought we could kind of share some of our favorite introductory ways that we went through to add some new foods.
Yeah. So if I were to start with this, and this is where I always start with the resistant starch method, because I find that for people transitioning into these new foods, it's really helpful. And so I use that for quinoa. I use that for sweet potatoes. I use it for oatmeal. I use it for rice. I love basmati rice, jasmine rice, because they tend to be a little bit easier to digest. And so when I am talking with people about adding those foods in that probably weren't part of their diet for a while, it's not just make it like everybody else. No, we always start with that resistant starch formula so that it's not only easier to digest, but it also has the potential to be decreasing inflammation while it's also proliferating that good bacteria in their gut. And so, always there. I love the resistant starch method. I love soaking as well. Maybe it's you haven't had nuts in a long time. Well, so let's go ahead and let's soak them, and then we can sprout them, right? And now they're hopefully going to be easier for you to digest. It might be putting something anything. And I'm a huge, massive fan of soups. So if there's some sort of vegetable, like oftentimes people will say to me, I can't eat that particular vegetable. Well, is it the vegetable or is it the way you're preparing the vegetable? Let's go ahead and put it in a soup. Let's puree that down, and then let's see how do you actually do with that vegetable. And that doesn't mean that you stay there. That just means that's a great place to start, to see, make it as easy to digest, easy to absorb, and then we can move on from there and see if you can now, can you move into what the general population is doing. So those are some of the things that I really love to play around with. Is it's not always about the food. Sometimes it's about how you prepare the food. That's actually the problem.
Yeah, I agree. And then, definitely cooking, because obviously cooking starts to break things down for you, and peeling and getting rid of the hard to digest. That's why, quinoa has a husk on it.
Yeah.
So you want to soak it and wash it. And,
get rid of those sapoins. Yeah.
Yeah, and then rice is not something I've really added in, but just because I wasn't really that into rice. But one of my favorites, because of course it's very popular, is the unsweetened cocoa.
Mm-hmm.
People want that, and if you're a follower of GAP's diet, that's actually one of the things that they have as an add-in pretty quickly. Once you start feeling better, and so if my thing is like add like a teaspoon or half a teaspoon to your smoothie, and or make some brownies and just put a tablespoon in there, and start off that way.
See how you do.
Yeah, see how you do. I like to put a little dash of it in my chili.
Mm-hmm.
And get that Malay flavor. And
that's so funny. I always do that too. I make a Cincinnati chili, and it has the unsweetened cacao in it. It's so it just gives it a richness that you don't. Yeah, that you don't get when you don't have it in there. I know when it's not in there. Yeah.
Yep. I like it. Yeah, with a little cumin, it gets that smoky, rich.
That's
flavor.
right. I love it. Oh my gosh. Yes, we make a very similar recipe. Mine is kind of from a Rachel Ray recipe that I kind of adapted to what I can eat, and she had that unsweetened chocolate in it, and so I said, "Oh, I'm going to try that," and that was years ago, and I just love it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great idea, trying the cacao, because of course it's not allowed on a specific carbohydrate diet, but you could be perfectly fine with it.
I think that's an early introduction for me too, because in the book Breaking the Vicious Cycle, there's not really a reason. It just said that Dr. Haas didn't trust it.
Is that right? I was trying to think back to what the reason was, but I don't know.
Yeah,
she didn't really trust it.
Listed. Yeah, he just said he wasn't just worried about the sugar. That's the quote. Huh. And then, a lot of people have a chocolate sensitivity.
That's right.
So, so you probably already know that though.
Exactly. I mean, how can you get this far and not know that?
Yeah. So, but if you don't, obviously hopefully you know already that if you had an allergy.
Yeah, but even not necessarily an allergy, it could just be a sensitivity. I do come across people. Yeah, it's a great point that you just made. I do come across some people that say, chocolate and it doesn't agree with me. And then we kind of process that a little bit. Is it white chocolate? Is it dark chocolate? Is it maybe the milk in the chocolate? And, sometimes we figure out it's just all chocolate. So, and some people don't even like chocolate. So, which crazy to me, but, because I'm a big chocolate lover. But you kind of have to probe that a little bit deeper and in what's really behind it. And if there is no reason, hey, let's just try it. Let's just try a little bit. I like how you say just a little bit, and let's just see how you do.
Yeah, a little bit, you wait, see if anything happens, try it again, and that's why, I try to get people is like one food at a time.
I try that too as well. Yes. I think that is the best way to feel empowered in this process, is to just go one food at a time. And yes, it's slow in the beginning, but if you embrace that tortoise slowness, you will win in the end. And those small wins, they really add up. So go slow, one new food at a time. And before you know it, you're going to see, holy cow, look at all these foods that I've added.
Mm. Yeah. What else? Do you have another favorite?
Oh gosh. Well, actually, I mentioned several. So let me actually get into like what it actually would look like. So just in case somebody listening is saying, well, I really want to try oatmeal, but I've tried it before and it didn't work for me. Okay, so let's talk oatmeal specifically. So for oatmeal, for example, I highly recommend the sprouted flat oats. They're made by a company called 1 Degree. That's it, 1 Degree. I don't know if you've seen those. They're at all health food stores. Maybe they're at your regular grocery store. I think they're at my Wegmans that we have locally, but you can definitely get it online for sure. And so it starts with the kind of oat that you use. If you buy those steel cut oats, now that's going to be really difficult to digest, especially if you haven't had oats in a long time. So you start with that really flat oat. And then you're going to cook it like according to your package directions. But then you're going to try and add a little bit of liquid to it, cover it, and you're going to cook it about 15 minutes longer. So now it's getting broken down even more. After that, you're going to use the resistant starch method, and then you're going to put it in your refrigerator for at least 8 hours. And now you've actually created something that is so much easier to digest. So when you think to yourself, well, I had steel cut oats that one time, and oh my gosh, I was in the bathroom for days, or my stomach was so achy, or I had bloating or gas. This is a whole different way to make it that is really worth trying. And the other thing with oatmeal is that, okay, so I love it because it's got a lot of fiber in it, and that's something that can be lacking on the specific carbohydrate diet. So it's that it's that soluble fiber. And so it's easier to digest, and you don't need a lot of it. So I'm not talking about like a big bowl of oatmeal like some people might have. I'm talking about a little bit as a side to your breakfast. And now you're getting nutrients that your body really needs that is in a very easily digestible way. So I just kind of wanted to mention that in case anybody's thinking, wow, I really like that they mentioned the sweet potatoes and the rice and the whatever else we mentioned about resistant starch, but I don't even know how to do it. So that's kind of how you would do it. It's about cooking it a little bit longer. It's about adding a little bit more liquid so it doesn't like dry out. And then it's about leaving it, cooling it for at least 8 hours so that you can then bring it back out again. And then you can hopefully, it's worth a try. Hopefully you can digest it much easier. So oatmeal is one. It's not one I typically start with. I do love that sweet potato. Then I like to kind of move into quinoa, that kind of thing. And then maybe oatmeal might be after that. Have you ever experimented with oatmeal?
I have experimented with oatmeal, but it was a long time ago. It was not proper. And so, yeah, I felt bloated, and I was like, oh, I don't need it. But every once in a while, I'm like, oh, I really want some oatmeal. And I got some quinoa flakes, but I just don't like the taste of them.
Yeah, so, not that good. Yeah.
Yeah, I like quinoa. I have the little puffs.
Mm-hmm.
And those are so good. And I make a little peanut butter quinoa puffs bar. It's really good. And but yeah, the quinoa flakes just taste weird to me.
Well, some people might love them, but it's just cardboard to me. Just a little bit like cardboard. Yeah.
So, but I might try that oatmeal method. I made some overnight quinoa.
Yes.
Overnight oatmeal.
Yeah.
And it was there's Chef Michael Simon. Have you heard of him? He has an autoimmune condition, so he wrote a couple of books they're called Fix It with Food. And so one of them had this overnight quinoa, and so I was like, I'm going to try that. And it was so good. It was I think I used some cashew milk and quinoa and some nuts and put a little ground flax in there. It was really good.
I think, the food on the specific carbohydrate diet plus a few of these extras that we're talking about is really a very balanced diet that you could live on for a long time without so much deprivation. Now, I do like rice. I've always liked rice. And so I was excited to be able to start rice again. And so I do eat rice, I would say, on a pretty regular basis. I wash it several times to get rid of that coating on the rice, like literally 8 to 10 times I wash it. And then after that, I go ahead and heat it up. I give it that extra cook time, and I add a little bit of extra water to it, put it in the refrigerator, and now it's much easier for me to digest. And I know that it's the way that I'm making it that makes a difference because I have tried it out at restaurants. and I feel bloated and I feel just achy in my belly after. And of course, they're making it in the traditional method. So I know for me, I need that method. I need that way of making it because I need it to help me digest it better. So I know it makes a difference. So it's really worth it for anybody listening who thought to themselves, I can't eat those things. I would go ahead and try this method that we're talking about because it's worth a try. I can't guarantee it's going to work for you, but it's worth a try to see if you can digest it because these are nutrients that are important for your body.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, yeah, that prep is not something I think a lot of people even think about because it's like, okay, well, I added rice in and I ordered it at a restaurant, like just like you're talking about. And now I don't feel well, so that must not work for me. Is kind of.
Yes, right. Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring that up because it can make a difference. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that makes.
quinoa, I probably would not be able to order that at a restaurant because I know they're not soaking it. I know they're
Mhm.
not rinsing it, but I know my body so well. I know it needs that. And so I just know I'm not going to order it at a restaurant. It's something I'm
Yeah,
going to do. I'm going to make that at home.
I don't generally, but I think that what we're talking about is getting over some of those food fears and having, like you said, that mindset can really help because I went on a business trip and I was like in the hotel starving because I traveled all day.
Oh, no.
And so I was like looking at the menu and it was like grilled salmon, um, some kind of greens sauteed, and quinoa. And I was like, I'm gonna get it, and it was good, and I had no issue. And I
Wow.
don't normally, it's not like I go out every day and order a quinoa
Yeah,
thing
yeah, yeah, yeah.
or anything, but that it works for me in the moment, and
Amazing.
I also was just like, I'm not gonna worry about it, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm by myself in the hotel. For some reason, it didn't work, but I wasn't worried. I wasn't like convincing myself that it wasn't going to work. I was actually like, this is really good. Um, and it's going to be fine. And it was. And so, and that's not me telling everybody to go do that. I'm just saying when you can get over some of those food fears, it does give you a little freedom. If you are traveling, if you're in a position, we all have, you have a family emergency and you're like, so you can't prepare your food. You're at a hospital all
Yeah,
day. You're going
yeah.
into the cafeteria. You got to be able to figure out what you can have because it's not healthy to not eat.
That's right. It's even worse to not eat. I think what you're saying, what I'm saying, it all boils down to doing the best you can do in that given moment and having the mindset to be okay with that. And I know that it's a lot easier said than done because I spent a long time in that place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that I finally took the leap and moved to the other side. And there were things that there are things that to this day I still can't eat, but I'm glad that I tried. Like no matter how hard I try, peppers are never going to work for me. It's just not. I don't know why. Peppers and we don't get along. It's not a what is it? Peppers, eggplant, what is that family? Nightshade. It's not a nightshade thing because I can eat the other nightshades. It's a pepper thing. So for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, they just don't work for me. And so I just don't eat them. And that's okay. So sometimes you're going to do that and always start small. You don't want to start with a big bowl of anything new. Always start small. And sometimes you're just going to say, this was not worth it. I don't feel well. And then you're not going to have it. And that's okay. But at least you tried, at least you made that effort and you did the best you could in that given moment. And if you can say that, then you've succeeded.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think it is. I think too, like you're saying, I don't eat that many non-SCD foods.
Yeah.
Sometimes I allow myself more of an indulgence than others, and that's an every once in a while thing. But it's given me the satisfaction that I needed without having to go like too far. And like I
Yeah.
said, if you could learn to make things with your unsweetened cocoa, like I have, then you're not tempted to go get something that's like so far out there and filled with sugar and who knows what because you're satisfied.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, I love that. It's because it's about feeling like you're satisfied with your food. You don't want to feel deprived. Yeah.
Yeah.
And personally, I think that any kind of chocolate is a great way to feel satisfied. Whether you're making brownies or you're putting it in a smoothie. I have a tea that I make that it's mint tea and it's a little bit of vanilla extract. And then I put a little bit of the unsweetened cacao in there. So it's like a mint hot chocolate. And then I'll even sometimes put like a little bit of coconut milk in there and it makes it a little bit creamy. Sometimes I froth it if I'm feeling really saucy. And to me, that's indulgent. Like I feel like I'm indulging, but it's healthy, right? So I don't feel like I have to go out and get one of those foo-foo-y Starbucks drinks or something because because I made it at home.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that, these foods are, you're eating these high quality foods. You don't need as much, it's like I have a little piece of chocolate that I made, like I have a little candy bar mold, and it's fine. I don't really need that much.
Yeah, I'm the same way too. I mean, sometimes I have clients that struggle with that, with, if I'm going to eat a little bit of, let's say, nut butter or chocolate or whatever it is, like they're going to eat the whole bar or the whole jar or whatever.
Right.
But I'm not like that. I'm the kind of person that can have a little bit and I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably a mindset. I think that when we think of things as cheating, we might binge it because we're like, okay, I'm going to use this up and then I'm not going to do it. But,
as long as I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that could be a factor too, where it's like you got to get past that idea that if it's always available to you, you should get theoretically you get used to the idea that it's there and when you need it, and you're not going to binge it. Now that might be, some people might literally have an issue where like I have to finish it, and I've certainly had that in my life where I just sort of keep wanting it and I'm like it's too much, but. But I think allowing, that's what I said, I spoke at a conference. I'm like, I'm choosing this and all the food is always available to me, no matter what it is. And so I'm making this choice that's for me.
That's right.
And so I think that's kind of that's how I combated those feelings of like, oh, I went off the diet, so I'm having whatever. Which I did do like, over 10 years ago now. And I had a little binge I think we talked about it. It was after my mom passed away. And, I was just like, whatever. And that didn't work out. So I had to reteach myself.
And sometimes it's about that learning, right? And so that was kind of sucky. I'm sure that wasn't fun to go through, but I bet you would say that you really learned from that experience.
Yeah, I do. I say I learned from it. I don't have total regrets because I got to have like a bunch of things that I hadn't had in a long time. And I had a very mild flare from it. So in that respect, I kind of was like, okay, I can get back on track and I'm fine. But I definitely learned from it. I learned how to teach myself, and I think I've learned, how to help others with that same thing. That's what
yes, and you going through that helps you help others.
Yeah,
yeah, and it verifies that what you're doing is making a difference in your life. Because otherwise, you might wonder, do I really still need to be doing this? But you had that opportunity to kind of stray and say, okay, actually, I actually do need to still do this. This does make sense. It does still fit. So it's good to kind of, I don't know if the word is test, but maybe kind of, maybe just test that every once in a while and say, okay, how, I want myself and I want you and I want everybody to be on the least strict diet that they have to be on. You want to be on, exactly. You want to be making the least amount of modifications that you need to. So it's good to see where those boundaries are and adding in some of those foods that make you a little bit nervous in a small way, in a slow way, is always a good idea to just see how you do. And we're talking about doing this from a place of remission, from a place of balance, not when you're teetering on the edge or in a massive flare-up.
Yeah. Yep, and that's the other part I have to talk to people about because they're kind of like, I've been doing this 2 months. When can I? It's like, how do you feel? And if you're struggling with the restriction part of it, that's the part we need to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Karyn. So, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in connecting with you?
So there's a couple places to connect with me. I am on Instagram at IBD Health Coach, at IBD Health Coach. That's the best place to connect with me. I also have a podcast. It's called The Cheeky Podcast for Moms with IBD. And you can find that wherever you get your podcasts. And then there's my website, which is KarynHaley.com. And my mom had to be a little bit weird and spell my name with a Y. So it's KarynHaley.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Karyn. This is a lot of fun.
It's always so great to talk with you. Kindred spirits.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Take care.